Today, we will discuss different tools that local governments can use to protect our rural landscape here in Delaware. One of the tenets of the complete communities approach is providing a strong delineation between town and country. In essence, it is essential for communities to decide which areas are to be preserved and protected, as well as developed or redeveloped. From a practical standpoint, as Ed McMahon from the Urban Land Institute explains in this quote, buying in from local residents as to what lands should be protected can be just as important as deciding what lands should be developed. Rural land management tools can be organized into two groups. The first group, market-based incentives, are based upon the permanent protection of rural lands either through fee-simple purchases or through conservation easements. This group will be the focus of this presentation. The second group of tools are all related to different forms of rural zoning that can be employed by local governments to both restrict residential and commercial development in rural areas on the one hand, and enable farmers to more easily transition to agritourism-related enterprises on the other. Agricultural zoning will be covered in a separate presentation. Before we discuss the individual tools, it is essential for us to understand the importance of agriculture to our state's economy. It is easy to appreciate the sheer beauty and bucolic farmlands and open spaces as you travel throughout Delaware, but do you realize that our small state is one of the top producing agricultural states in the country? Sussex County is in fact the #1 poultry county in the entire country, while Kent and Sussex counties remain some of the top vegetable producing counties on the East Coast. What's more, the effect of agriculture does not stop at the farm gate. Delaware's 2,500 farm families support an estimated 30,000 manufacturing and service jobs in the state. In Kent and Sussex counties, the majority of manufacturing jobs are tied directly to agriculture. While farmers produce just over $1 billion of crops and animal products, when you consider the cumulative wages, sales and profits of our food processors, and agricultural support jobs in the service, agriculture as an industry has a net economic impact of $7.95 billion on the state's economy. Highlighted here is just a small sampling of food processing companies and farm support businesses in the service sector. Despite a thriving agricultural economy, this landscape has been under intense developmental pressure for the past 3 decades. From 1987 to 2007, a span of just 20 years, nearly 100,000 acres of farmland in Delaware has been converted to other uses. Signs like these have become commonplace in once rural communities across the state as farmland is sold off for residential and commercial development. This is not just a problem for densely populated New Castle County either. Once sleepy Sussex County has lost more than 40,000 acres of farmland in the past 25 years. This rate of decline puts the state's entire agricultural economy at risk if it is allowed to continue unabated. Most concerning about this trend is not necessarily the amount of farmland being lost to new development, but rather the dispersed nature of that loss. Because of the ease of access to our metropolitan job markets, new growth does not radiate outward as before, but rather leapfrogs around and across the countryside as shown above in southern New Castle County. This can create serious hardships for those farmers remaining behind. Tractor dealerships, grain towers, feed and seed dealers, and large animal veterinarians all require a stable base of farm customers to survive. However, as farms are sold to new development, the area will reach a critical breaking point in which these support businesses will either close or relocate. As additional farms are sold off to new development and the farm support businesses close, those farmers remaining will typically stop investing in their businesses as they begin to view the transition to suburban development as inevitable. This concept is known as the Impermanence Syndrome. This can be seen in the lack of basic maintenance on their barns and structures and the unwillingness to invest in new technologies or equipment. After all, why invest in a business if it will be sold off to a developer in a few years? As pictured above, the Impermanence Syndrome can be seen in abundance among the heavily fragmented farms of southern New Castle County. Some have argued that farmers can survive on the fragmented suburban fringe by adopting their operation to the direct marketing of their crops and products to neighboring consumers. Woodside Creamery, near Hocassin, Delaware, is a shining example of a farm that has embraced the benefits and new customers that suburbanization brings. However, examples such as this tend to be rare. While a very limited number of farms may be able to survive following the fragmentation and suburbanization of the countryside, agriculture as an industry will almost always collapse. Even if the farmer can successfully transition to a niche farm-to-consumer operation, there is no guarantee that neighboring residents will approve. In many, if not most cases, this is the first experience these suburbanites have living in an agricultural area. They think living out in the countryside is bucolic and tranquil until the first time the neighboring farmer spreads poultry manure. They are often appalled to learn that a new poultry barn or tractor shed is not an idyllic 19th century stone bank barn, or that farmers have the gall to drive their massive tractors and combines down their quiet rural country roads. Highlighted on this slide are just two recent examples of this phenomenon, one from the proposed poultry plant in Millsboro, Delaware, and the other from a dairy farm just outside of Annapolis, Maryland. Unlike most states, state agencies here in Delaware are responsible for funding all or most of the necessary public services and infrastructure that accompany new development. The state thus has an interest to ensure that new development does not spread far from established communities and into the rural hinterlands, which would require a wasteful spread of state-funded public services and infrastructure. Recognizing this challenge, in 1999, Governor Carper created by executive order the Delaware State Strategies for State Policies and Spending. Using county and municipal comprehensive plans as a guide, it has identified down to the parcel level areas in which the state will prioritize state infrastructure dollars. It divided the state into 5 levels by levels of precedence for state spending. Level 1, highlighted here in red, consists of areas of existing development, which are currently served by public water and sewer. Level 2 areas, highlighted here in orange, are transitional and rapidly developing areas adjacent to or within municipalities and growth areas. They are either currently served by public water and sewer, or are planned to receive said infrastructure in the very near future. Level 3 areas, highlighted here in yellow, are areas that are expected to receive growth in public utilities in the long-term future. Much of these lands are currently rural and vacant undeveloped parcels that have been identified as potential growth areas in years to come. New development is expected to be low density. Level 4 areas, identified on the map as white, are rural areas dominated by agricultural and other resource-based industries. These areas have been identified as not to receive state infrastructure funding for the extension of public utilities and services. These areas also include much of the state's prime agricultural soils and most environmentally sensitive lands. Funding for farmland preservation and parkland acquisition has been targeted to these areas. New residential, commercial, and industrial development should only be allowed here so far as it does not interfere with and is compatible with its neighboring agricultural uses. This area will be the focus of the following presentations. The gray areas, highlighted here, are lands which have already been protected by state and local preservation programs. We will discuss how this was accomplished in greater detail later on in the following presentations.